not even make it to this point, not even make it to the conference finals. So I thought last night's performance was a great one for the Bucks because, you're supposed to win game one on your home court, no doubt, but they had to take care of business, and they were down 9 at halftime, came all the way back. And, one of the craziest stories in the NBA that nobody's talking about is Brook Lopez. Brook Lopez made 0 threes his first 400 games in the NBA. Now, over the last couple seasons, he's learned how to make threes, and this year he made over 200. And last night he had 29 points and 11 rebounds. I don't think anybody in the world had Brook Lopez going 29 and 11 in the conference finals for any team, let alone the Milwaukee Bucks. But Brooks, just take us through game one. What did you watch? What did you see last night? And what do you think of this matchup? Because it seems like the Raptors have kind of revamped their whole thing too, and Kawhi Leonard is reminding everybody that he is one of the best players in the league. But a huge win for the Bucks last night.
A huge win for the Bucks. The first impression I had is how happy I am that there's stars. There's star power outside of LeBron James in the East. The East has been, the last 10 years been quite a ways behind the West as far as talent and depth goes. When you get Kawhi Leonard in the Eastern Conference, then you have Giannis come over and really start to. He's easily a top 5 player in the NBA, if not one of the most important players in the entire league. So Giannis last night, I thought that the Raptors played such a good style of defense on him, and it flustered him early. And I thought it was so amazing to watch him make adjustments, find open shooters. A lot of the role players, which the Bucks have so many of, really did play well. So when you see Giannis start to kind of get the 4-man defense, anytime that he gets into the lane, everyone crashes. You're allowing shooters to be open. Those shooters have to make shots. Early on, the Raptors had complete control of the game. They had some great pace. I think Pascal Siakam, a guy who really struggled last round, had played a really good, solid coming out game as far as the playoffs go. The first 2 rounds of the playoffs, you can get by with one good player. You can win series in the NBA, especially in the first round, with one good scorer. And now we've seen the Raptors kind of develop a couple different pieces. Serge Ibaka having kind of a resurgence, looking like he did 3 or 4 years ago when he was playing big-time playoff minutes for the Oklahoma City Thunder. I think that defensively it's going to be such an interesting matchup when do you keep Giannis on the court and go small? Brook Lopez was such a big impact last night, but you could also put Giannis at center and even allow him to bring the ball up and kind of get Marc Gasol for the Raptors off the court and have to have Serge Ibaka Giannis matchup, which is so intriguing because such a well-versed defender against such a young talent. I think that's going to start to play a little bit more. But overall, I agree. It's a huge win for the Bucks because they were kind of getting trounced in the first half. And I thought that the Raptors had a really good game plan. But Kawhi started to get shut down a little bit. I think that the coaching matchup in this series will be very interesting, a little bit of different styles, but both guys that are willing to make adjustments. We'll see who can make more adjustments. But overall, I agree. I think it was a big win for the Bucks.
There's a lot there I want to touch on, but at number one, there's been much made in the national media about a playoffs that does not have LeBron James. And early on, it sounded like the ratings were down, but it seems like the ratings have come back up, especially with how appealing the Portland Trailblazers have been with the continued emergence and continued fortification of Giannis Antetokounmpo as one of the superstars in the league. And honestly, the reemergence of Kawhi Leonard has helped a lot too. But what have you thought of just broadly the playoffs taking place without LeBron?
I think it's interesting. I think it's, at this stage of LeBron James' career, it's not a knock on him at all. It's just the league has begun to evolve. Everyone that's in the league now that's young stars like Jason Tatum and Giannis and even Kyrie Irving to an extent, Victor Oladipo, those guys were LeBron James guys. There was a whole generation of the NBA that was Michael Jordan guys. That's who was on TV when they were kids.
Yep.
And now that generation passed, and everyone now that's in the league, especially the young talent, LeBron James is that guy for them. So it's interesting to not see him, but I think it's also kind of a breath of fresh air. Or let's say you take the curtain back a little bit on these guys, allowing them to tell their stories, whether that's just through their game or through interviews before and after the games. You get to see a little bit more personality of some of these young guys, and they're not having to answer the question of how hard was it to contain LeBron's night. Well, everyone knows that's always hard. that question's kind of in the rear view at this exact moment. We're talking a lot more about matchups of guys that we haven't necessarily seen in the last 16 years of the NBA.
Tootell, Nuanez 129, ESPN Missoula statewide, SWX Montana, worldwide on YouTube television. Check out that live stream that Tommy Evans has got hooked up for us. That thing looks beautiful. Brooks Nuanez joining us on the Regich Brothers RV phone line. I think that point you just made is so interesting. When superstar athletes, the influence that they have, and when they reach the middle or back end of their career, and all of a sudden they're playing against the generation that they created. And with the reemergence of Tiger Woods in golf, it's so fascinating because all of the guys, most of the guys, I should say, are Tiger Woods proteges, basically. I mean, Rory McIlroy grew up wanting to be Tiger Woods. Dustin Johnson, Ricky Fowler, on down the line, Jordan Spieth. These guys grew up watching Tiger. So now him reemerging and being a true threat in majors is so interesting to watch him compete against guys who idolized him and who just deified him almost. And the LeBron James era, that's definitely an interesting one too. And we have a bunch of young players in the league that certainly are, Team LeBron. I watched The Shop the other night on HBO, LeBron James's sort of unedited, uncut talk show where he just sits in a barbershop with a bunch of his buddies and famous people, and they talk just about broad topics, a lot of social stuff, a lot of social issues. They talk about race in America and a lot of other things. But Lonzo Ball was on there the other night, and he was talking just exactly about that, just about how much LeBron impacted him, how crazy he felt when LeBron James signed with the Los Angeles Lakers, what he thought that was going to be like. When you're in the locker room, you're 19, 20 years old, like Lonzo Ball, you just look down the row, and there's LeBron. You're like, well, what's up, man? Like, we're teammates. Holy cow, what a thing. But I want to ask you about Giannis from this perspective, because Regime Seabrook and I were talking about this last week. And by the way, Regime will be in studio with me tomorrow to finish out this hiatus with Ryan Tootell on the road in the Philippines. But Regime and I were talking about, we broke down my list of my top 25 NBA players. And almost every single one of those guys, the number one flaw, the number one knock you could have on them is just their emotional volatility. The fact that, a guy like Russell Westbrook is just so demonstrative, or a guy like Jimmy Butler just seems like he's such a malcontent, or a guy like Kyrie Irving is just all over the map mentally. And, on down the line, James Harden plays an unappealing and sort of, at least broadly perceived as selfish style of basketball. Anthony Davis quit on his team this year, sat out the whole second half of this last year. And there was 4 guys we identified as guys that aren't necessarily these mental messes like a lot of these superstars are. And that was Damian Lillard, and that was Stephen Curry. I know people don't like Stephen Curry. Steph's become polarized because of the success, because of the mouthpiece, the way he chews on it, whatever. But Steph is not a disgruntled or malcontent player. He is such a enthusiastic and positive type player. But Nikola Jokic was another one, and Giannis Antetokounmpo was another one. And I just find it so fascinating that you have a guy like Lillard, who's a 2-star recruit, a guy that wasn't a quote-unquote child star, so to speak. You got a guy like Jokic who comes from Eastern Europe. He's from Serbia. So he comes with a completely different and very steely demeanor. And then a guy like Giannis, when you watch Giannis take over games late, there's been so many different defenses that have been thrown at Giannis during this playoffs already. And there's been a lot of teams that have been able to hold him down for a quarter or 2 quarters or 3 quarters. And I was thinking this last night. There's been very few players in the history of the NBA that have the physical gifts that Giannis Antetokounmpo has. He is a true 6'11", 250-pound guy who can handle the ball. His wingspan is close to 8 feet. There's never been somebody that's built like him, that just the pure gifts he has. But all those gifts are secondary to his mentality, to his want to. He cannot be denied. When he wants to get the rebound, he's going to get the rebound. Like last night when it was I think it was a 6 or 8 point game, and the Raptors were trying to cut it. They were trying to cut it, and they couldn't quite do it. And Giannis had 2 enormous block shots where most of the time in a game like that, a superstar would never take a risk to block a shot with that sort of a lead. They would just kind of try to milk the clock all the way to the end. But Giannis is just so aggressive. He's so ferocious. And I just find it such a pleasure to watch him. So, I mean, the fact that where he comes from, the fact that he's an international player from Greece. He comes from an incredibly disenfranchised background. He's homeless at one point when he was a kid. He's stealing bread on the streets to even survive. And you can see that survivor mentality within him, and I just think it's the thing that sets him apart.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. I mean, it's really hard to get past the biceps and the deltoids and the foot-long hand. His hand wraps around the ball like a softball. All that stuff aside, yeah, he does have a great mentality. He also has, the same kind of mentality that you see from time to time. Like you talked about, there's a lot of focus involved, but there's a lot of fun. He enjoys what he's doing. I think anyone would with those physical skills, but you can also tell that he's playing with house money right now. I mean, the world is his, and I don't think that anyone, including him, thought that he would be arguably the best player in the NBA. Now that Kevin Durant is out and LeBron's not in the playoffs, I mean, I think Kawhi Leonard is right there, but I think by all accounts, Giannis Antetokounmpo is the best player in the NBA, and I think that at this exact juncture, he's playing with house money. You can see that there's a little freedom to his game. He also, when he has the ability to create and how unselfish he really truly is, and he can bring the ball up the court while being the best rebounder on the floor, I don't think we've ever seen anything like it in the NBA. It's almost, he has some LeBron James rebounding, a little bit of the passing, but that'll come. It's not really LeBron-esque, but it's definitely point forward-esque. But he's got scoring ability a lot like some of the best guys in the league, especially around the rim. But then he's got this ability to really build culture while also bringing other guys along. And the Bucks are thriving, and they've been the best team in the league this entire year, so it's no surprise to me, but it is a surprise to some. It's pretty fun to see.
You mentioned Kevin Durant. It's Tootell, Nuanez, 129 ESPN Missoula, statewide, SWX Montana Television, and worldwide on YouTube. Check out that live stream that Tommy Evans has got up for us. Kevin Durant out. They're calling it a calf injury. You reported to me that you thought it was an Achilles. I watched it again. It looked like an Achilles to me, too. I'm not here really to debate whether the Warriors are fudging and if they are kind of trying to hide something that's more serious than initially thought of. But with no Kevin Durant, the Warriors are now 1-2 straight. They look like the Warriors did before Kevin Durant came there. Steve Kerr, he's so bold. He was playing lineups with Quinn Cook and Jerebko and Bogut and Sean Livingston all at once, and they were still controlling the game against the Blazers. And it seems like they've almost immediately recaptured the beautiful team basketball that made them a 73-9 team, that made them one of the great teams in the history of the NBA before signing one of the greatest players ever in Kevin Durant. And I find it absolutely fascinating that it seems as if this core of Warriors players, Stephen Curry, Klay Thompson, Andre Iguodala, Draymond Green, it's almost as if they want to prove to the world that they can win without Kevin Durant. And then if Kevin Durant leaves, so be it. But I found it unfortunate and exhausting that the Kevin Durant narrative, just Kevin Durant's drama, Kevin Durant's disgruntled nature, Kevin Durant's inability to take criticism, Kevin Durant, it's overwhelmed and overshadowed so much of this NBA season, specifically so much of this Warriors season. It's almost as if people forget that they're gunning for a third straight championship, that they're gunning for their fourth championship in 5 years. Instead, it's just been about, where's Durant going to go? Why don't Durant and Draymond Green get along? And without Durant in the fold, it seems as if now the Warriors are sort of repossessing the identity that made them so special. And it's too bad for the Blazers because I think the Blazers are a wonderfully constructed team. I think Damian Lillard has definitely blossomed into one of the best players in the NBA. I love C.J. McCollum. I love the story. I love, Terry Stotts proving himself finally and affirming all the praise he's received throughout his career. But when you watch the Warriors, Brooks, now without KD in the fold, it looks like it did a couple years ago, right?
Absolutely. And, it's unfortunate because I like a little bit more parity. But Kevin Durant is also one of my favorite players of all time just to watch. I mean, I think he's the most peerless scorer to ever live. I think he's a top 10, top 12 NBA player of all time. I think that this is exactly Kevin Durant getting hurt is exactly what the Warriors needed to get to push them over the edge to win the third championship in a row in the fourth in 5 years. They were getting burned out. There was a lot of drama. you could tell that there wasn't enough. The ball couldn't find enough hands, and that's just the case. I think it happened in Philadelphia. I think that the Sixers are better without Tobias Harris. I think that they just you can only have 3 stars. I mean, I think the big 3 that the Heat built many years ago with Bosh and Dwayne Wade and LeBron James is kind of the exact mold that you're looking at. When you add a 4th guy, like what the Warriors have with Draymond Green and Klay Thompson and Steph Curry, and then add Kevin Durant, there's just not enough time in the game and not enough possessions to get everyone what they need. Getting rid of Kevin Durant due to injury now allows the ball to find every hand that it needs to, like it used to. Draymond Green's always been the X factor for them, as well as Andre Iguodala, but Draymond Green's been the X factor, and if he doesn't get offensive touches, he can't ever find a rhythm. Yep. And then he just becomes this bully that gets in trouble and gets in foul trouble and doesn't necessarily make his mark on a game. But now that there's more touches, you'll see Draymond really push himself to the limit. You'll see all these guys push themselves. There's always been this little bit of, when Kevin Durant's on the floor with those group of guys, you can all stand around and not do anything, and you'll be just fine. Because Kevin Durant will hit every shot that you ever need him to. And then, oh, by the way, you'll have 2 of the greatest 5 shooters to ever live in the corners waiting. You can run tons of action. I think that, unfortunately, for my parody opinion, it's exactly what the Warriors needed. They needed a little bit of motivation. They needed Steph and Klay needed to show everybody that, hey, we don't win these because of Kevin Durant. And I think that they're well on their way to doing that, even though I really do like Portland. I think Portland's a great team. I agree. They're well constructed. When they lost Mirotic, I thought that was a pretty big loss. But overall, I think that the Warriors they're posed to do it again, which is pretty interesting. Luckily, there's some competition in the East. I think some stiff competition that they're going to have to face in the finals. But I have Warriors in 5 against the Blazers.
Brooks Nuanez joining us on the Rangich Brothers RV phone line. And last thing I want to touch on with you, the NBA draft lottery the other night. And everybody's up in arms, as always. It's always controversial. Everybody always implies or straight up says that it's rigged. But the Phoenix Suns, worst record in the league, they get the number 6 pick. The New Orleans Pelicans probably would have been a borderline playoff team and were a playoff team that won a playoff series a year ago, if not for the drama with Anthony Davis. The New York Knicks get the number 3 pick. The Grizzlies are number 2. And the Lakers get up to number 4. And, it's a top-heavy draft, Brooks. You got Zion Williamson, no doubt going to be the number 1 pick. R.J. Barrett, John Morant are definitely impact guys. But I don't really know where you go after that. I think that everybody else in this draft, there's some intriguing prospects that are pretty good, but I think that there's no surefire guys. A ton of guys with upside, but what are they going to become? And it's risky when you get outside that top 3 or that top 4. But the New Orleans Pelicans, it seems like now they have new life. And I just want to know, what do you think? Do you think that the fact that they got the number 1 pick and they have an opportunity and a likely certainty to draft Zion Williamson, does that impact what Anthony Davis does?
I think it does. I do think it impacts it. I think Anthony Davis still is going to leave. If I was the Pelicans, I would probably force him to stay till February. I don't really know. That bridge has pretty much been burned. Unless Anthony Davis came out with a pretty big-time apology, I think that his time in New Orleans is done. I see a lot of different scenarios that could play out. I think that the Lakers trading the number 4 pick and everyone they have to the Pelicans, so the Pelicans get the 1st and 4th pick. You could see Zion Williamson and R.J. Barrett kind of reunite in New Orleans. I think that there's some opportunity for the Pelicans to start from ground zero by trading Anthony Davis and getting another high pick. The Lakers are clearly one of the front runners in that, but the Knicks are as well. So I think Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving both have opportunities to go to the Knicks. I think the Knicks, as being a basketball mecca, can draw stars. And they, with a 3rd pick there, I think that you could trade that pick somehow, some way. They don't have enough players necessarily to get Anthony Davis with that pick involved, but I do see Anthony Davis moving. I don't see his time with the Pelicans being much longer. But a note on this draft, there's a couple players, and I think that there's some players that are pretty well known from March Madness that I think are really good NBA players. I think Jarrett Culver from Texas Tech is going to be a great NBA player. I also think that DeAndre Hunter from Virginia is going to be a great NBA player. The funny thing about this draft, including Zion, including R.J. Barrett, including Cam Reddish, including the 2 guys I just named, in the top 10 there is no shooters, and it's a shooting league. So overall, there's some guys that will have the potential to get up some shots and can learn some of the NBA style of game, but there is no peerless shooter in the top 5. which I think is pretty unique.
Tootell Nuanez, Brooks Nuanez joining us via the Rankage Brothers RV phone line. And I appreciate the time today, man. Good stuff as always, and we'll catch up with you soon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Quinn Peacock from the University of Montana women's soccer team, a former Missoula Striker. She's going to be in studio talking about Strikers soccer, talking about the University of Montana and their recent run to the NCAA tournament, and a variety of other subjects as well. So that'll be fun, kicking off our series of local soccer interviews as we lead up to the Intermountain Champions Cup, which is at Fort Missoula Regional Park. It'll be June 21st through the 23rd, and it'll be 70 to 75 teams descending upon the fort and the city of Missoula. So that will be super fun for everybody. Hey, speaking of nice weather and outdoor activities, if you want to go play some golf, go check out Canyon River. They got new golf carts outfitted with the Shark Experience. Shark Experience allows every hole to have dynamic interactions with the players, giving bunker and hole distances from the cart as it moves. But they also have touchscreen capabilities to set up shots for specific distances and yards. You can locate where the hazards are, the bunkers, the water. You can shape your shots. If you need to lay up, you can pull it back and see, hey, maybe I need to hit a 7-iron into a wedge here on a long par 5. It also has live scores and music with Bluetooth capabilities, and they have surround sound too. So you can listen to podcasts, you can listen to this show, both live and archived out there. You can also listen to your favorite national podcasts or whatever else you might listen to. Music, they have satellite radio, have all sorts of stuff. They also have a ticker tape on there, so you can follow baseball or golf or whatever it might be. So go visit CanyonRiverGolfClub.com and check out all of that. Plus, you can book tee times there, and you can get great savings and specials regularly. Beautiful setting along the river and the mountains in East Missoula. Canyon River Golf Club, Missoula's best golf experience. Quinn Peacock, University of Montana women's soccer team, former Missoula Striker, in studio to talk about the Strikers, the Intermountain Cup, and a variety of other things as well. Tootell Nuanez. Hey, Tootell Nuanez here. Can't tell you how many times we've heard the face for radio joke since we came on SWX television, but it's been a fun endeavor so far.
And now our esteemed producer Tommy is pushing the envelope even further. We got our own YouTube channel.
That's right. If you want to watch us every day from your computer, your tablet, your cell phone, you can check out Tootell Nuanez on YouTube.
Tootell Nuanez, live every weekday from 4 to 6 in the afternoons on 102.9 ESPN Radio for Missoula, SWX Montana statewide, and now around the planet Earth on YouTube. Canyon River Golf Club is a must for any golfer in western Montana. Tucked away in a spectacular setting along the Clark Fork River in East Missoula, Canyon River offers one of Montana's best championship golf experiences. And Canyon River is happy to announce their new fleet of golf carts, which include the Shark Experience, an interactive GPS giving dynamic distances and touchscreen interaction to help you play your best. Plus, with Bluetooth, radio, and surround sound, you can enjoy yourself between holes too. Book online at CanyonRiverGolfClub.com. Missoula's best golf, Canyon River. Hey folks, Ryan Tootell here with Josh from The Advocates. If you've been in a car accident and need help dealing with the insurance company, you should give The Advocates a call.
It doesn't cost anything at all to call, and I'd be happy to talk with you about your situation. You don't want to have to be dealing with contacting the insurance companies and setting up your claim. We can do that for you from start to finish. We'll take the hassle out of the process so you can just focus on getting better.
There you go, folks. If you've been injured in an accident, give Josh a call, 640-4444, or online at MontanaAdvocates.com. There are a lot of lawyers, but you deserve an advocate.
This is Mike Nugent with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. Berkshire Hathaway provides Western Montana with full-time real estate professionals for you whenever you need us. Our reputation as the state's most knowledgeable and available real estate group has helped build unmatched trust in the Garden City and statewide. If you have been thinking of making a real estate move in the short or long term, give me a call. No pressure, no expectations. Just professional opinions and service at whatever pace you are comfortable with. Give me, Mike Nugent, a call today, 531-1802. And remember, every question is good to ask.
For 61 years, a handshake has meant something at Rankage Brothers RV, offering the best quality, reliability, and savings in western Montana. And to say thanks, we're celebrating all May long during our May Days anniversary sale. To celebrate, we are offering exclusive deals on Jayco models, like a new Jayco bunkhouse travel trailer, starting at only $129 per month OAC. Or celebrate the great outdoors with a new 2019 Jayco Red Hawk Class C motorhome. Anniversary priced at only $58,750. Stop in, save big all May long during our May Days anniversary sale. Only where a handshake means something. Rankage Brothers RV Center.
The splash of launching a new boat, the quiet of a favorite campsite, the noisy fun of a family barbecue on your new deck. Whatever summer sounds like to you, make it happen with a personal loan from Farmers State Bank. 9 locations to serve you, or start the loan application process online at farmersebank.com. Farmer State Bank, your Montana bank since 1907, an equal housing lender and member FDIC.
ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
Good afternoon. Coulter Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Missoula. A clean sweep as the Montana State golf tournaments completed yesterday. In the fall, Bozeman High and Laurel High swept the Class AA and Class A state boys and girls golf tournaments. This week in Western Montana, the Missoula Loyola boys and girls swept the first ever Class B tournaments held here in the Garden City, and Manhattan Christian swept the Class C tournaments, both boys and girls, held in Seeley Lake. Loyola senior Bucky Crippen fired an opening round 65, the third lowest round in the history of the Class B state tournament, then followed it up with a 75 at the Ranch Club in Missoula to claim his second straight state title. The two-day display helped the Rams to a nearly 50-stroke victory over Conrad for their second straight team title. Loyola senior Katie Fagg shot a 74, the best round of her high school career, in the opening round of the Class B girls tournament at Canyon River on Tuesday. Then she followed it up with an 82, the low round yesterday, to win the state title and help the Breakers repeat as the state champions as well. Landry Poligchuk, a senior from Ennis, outlasted defending girls state champion Jillian Fry of Manhattan Christian for the small school title at the AA golf course in Seeley. And Caden Hill, he cruised to his second straight boys Class C title by shooting a second round 81 to earn a 12-stroke victory. Team titles, the third straight for Manhattan Christian on the girls' side and the second straight for the Eagle boys. Tootell Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Missoula, statewide, SWX Montana, and worldwide on YouTube television. Go check out that YouTube live stream if you haven't already. Tommy Evans doing a great job with that. Appreciate those guys at SWX Montana as well for getting us statewide. If you want to hit us up on Twitter, at 1029 ESPN. We're going to have some giveaway stuff on there here coming up this next couple weeks, like we have been the last couple weeks. You can also hit up at Skyline Sports MT. That's the Twitter handle for SkylineSportsMT.com. My multimedia company. Last break, we heard from Brooks Nuanez, SkylineSportsMT.com, breaking down the NBA, breaking down the NBA draft lottery. Now, joined in studio, this is great, Quinn Peacock from Missoula Sentinel, future Lady Grizz soccer player, and a Missoula Striker standout as well. This is the first of a 4-part series of interviews that we're doing leading up to the Intermountain Champions Cup. The Intermountain Champions Cup, a youth soccer tournament that will be held here at Fort Missoula June 21st through the 23rd. About 70-plus teams is what we're expecting here. Some of the best teams from the entire region at all age levels. So you're going to have U10s all the way up through U19s playing, and it should be a really fun time. Quinn, thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you.
First of all, tell us just a little bit about your Strikers experience. It's interesting in Montana because soccer's in the fall, Strikers is in the spring, clubs in the spring. So you have an opportunity to play year-round, and it's definitely very competitive both sides. But because you're playing with girls from around Missoula, Strikers really competitive, and you get to play teams from around the region. So how do you think that that's influenced just your soccer career?
So I feel like, especially comparing to high school, Strikers, you get a little more time. High school is a pretty fast season, and with Strikers, you really focus on all of the technique and team play, and I think through the years, that's really helped a lot of the players develop the skills that they have.
The development portion of this is so interesting because soccer is such a fundamentally essential sport. So talk about that element of it, just the fundamental development of the Strikers program and how it's helped you just in skill and helped you now become a Division I recruit.
I mean, honestly, I have to give all of that to my coaches. I've had some of the best coaches this state has probably ever seen, and I think that in general, just the focus on development and technique and honestly just effort and hard work has really pushed me to be as best as I can be.
The Intermountain Cup is something that you played in last year. So what do you think of this tournament? Obviously, the Fort Missoula is now one of the great soccer facilities in this region, honestly, in the state and the region. So, first of all, how fun is it to play down at the Fort? And what do you think of just this tournament upcoming? You guys are probably pretty excited.
Oh, yeah, I love it. And especially as a Strikers tournament, you're just there and you're around. The entire Strikers community is there. And I spend all day there when I'm at the tournament, just watching other teams. You know everyone. It's a really fun environment. There's a band, too, so it just makes it a really fun place to be.
finishing up your senior year here at Missoula Sentinel. So you already got your college plans all ironed out. You're going to go play soccer for the University of Montana. So tell us just what the feedback's been like at Sentinel. It must be pretty exciting because it's been a little while. I think Steph Carl from Missoula Big Sky, the last local girl that earned a letter for the Lady Grizz, and that was some 5-6 years ago. So probably pretty exciting for you to be able to represent your high school, your family in your hometown.
Oh, yeah, it's been super fun. I've gotten a lot of support from really everyone, especially at Sentinel. I'd say it's a pretty sport-focused school, and so it's kind of nice just you have everyone backing you, the students, the teachers, my coaches there. It's just been really a great experience.
That's awesome. So tell us about just the recruiting process with the University of Montana. They probably a place that you dreamed of playing your whole life, but what went into your college decision, and what was it like for you when you actually did get a chance to commit and sign and officially become a Lady Grizz?
So, I mean, it was a little bit of a long kind of experience just because there was a transition of coaches, but I really, once Chris came in, I really enjoyed talking to him, and I really enjoyed that he obviously gave me a chance to be on this team, and it's really been great. I'd say recruitment is a little bit stressful just because you don't ever really see the future and where it's going, but I think coaches kind of think the same thing, so once you get in and you actually start getting a relationship with your coach, it's really nice. And to be in Missoula still and play in the place that I love is probably one of the best things I could ask for.
Chris Chidvisky took over the University of Montana soccer program before last season, and it was really fun. One of the most fun teams of the last fall sports season, just watching the way that they improved, because they were a young team and they didn't have a lot of success early, and then they just got red hot. And I think they won 6 straight matches down the stretch, won the Big Sky tournament. They went to the NCAA tournament. So were you following them pretty closely when they were going on their awesome run?
Oh, for sure. And I was communicating with the coaches during that as well. And I feel like that was just really fun to see, because I think the reason they did so well was the environment that the coaches kind of established within that team through the season, not that they had that much time before. And so I think that I'm really excited to go play for a team with an environment like that.
Absolutely. And the NCAA tournament on the college basketball scale, as well as even college baseball, it's so highly publicized. There's so much exposure out there. But do you feel like it's a similar dream for a soccer star to want to go play in the NCAA tournament, get to that big dance?
I think, no matter what you're in, you always want to be the best team and you always want to win. And I think that, it's definitely not as, countrywide of a thing like, oh, let's go watch NCAA soccer. But I think while you're in it, it's just as big of a deal.
What's next for you in terms of this summer? Obviously, you got the Intermountain Championship coming on. What else do you have planned in terms of soccer and otherwise?
Soccer as much as I can. That's really what I do. I think, honestly, it'll be fun just enjoying my last summer that I'll have with a lot of my friends. I have a lot of friends moving away to go play sports in other states, but focusing on just getting ready for the season and being in as best of shape and best of mindset as I can be.
Intermountain Championships at Fort Missoula, June 21st through the 23rd. It'll be a great couple days of soccer. Some of the best teams from the state of Montana and from around the region as well. Some of the most highly competitive club teams that you'll find anywhere in the Northwest region. Should be really fun to watch. Quinn Peacock, Missoula Sentinel, University of Montana, Missoula Strikers. Thanks so much for coming in and joining us.
Thank you.
On the other side, we're going to talk a little bit more about Montana State hoops. Yesterday, Tucker Sargent and I talked a little bit about the new additions to the Montana State Bobcat basketball roster, but I want to hash this out a little bit more. And as we have all week, we got our word of the day for you. You're going to have to text it in, 200-8184. Remember that number. We're sending to you on a whitewater rafting trip. Thanks to Adventure Missoula. Tootell and Nuanez, 129 ESPN Missoula, SWX Montana.
Alpine Touch has mastered keeping your taste buds happy by spicing up anything you throw on the grill this summer. Now, let Alpine Touch keep your mouth watering whenever you want their new sunflower shooters. Their new jumbo sunflower seeds seasoned with Alpine Touch's world-famous all-purpose seasonings. And Alpine Touch sunflower shooters will be available all summer at every Osprey baseball home game. Available at retail locations around the state and online at alpinetouch.com. Alpine Touch, Montana's special spice.
Hey folks, Folks, the best season of the year is upon us. That's right, it's tax return season, and there's one place to have the most fun and make that refund check stretch further than anywhere else, Selway Armory. Selway Armory has the largest selection of firearms, ammo, and accessories of anywhere around, and they have the expertise to go with it. It's not everywhere that you can shop local and save money, but Selway Armory will meet or beat any box store price, and your money stays in Montana. It's tax return time, so get more bang for your buck at Selway Armory. Visit online at selwayarmory.com.
It's time to get geared up for fly fishing season at the Kingfisher's Spring Runoff Sale. From May 11th through the 17th, save up to 30% on in-stock fly rods, waders, boots, reels, flies, and anything else you need to keep catching you fish all season long. Don't see the item you want? No problem. They can special order whatever it is you're after. Snack on coffee and donuts while checking out the latest products from all the top shelf vendors. If your gear closet is looking sparse and your fly selection isn't what you'd like it to be, it's time to load up the Spring Runoff Sale at the Kingfisher.
Hey everybody, here with my good friend Josh from the Advocates Injury Law Firm. Josh, if I've been in an accident, how much is it going to cost me to hire you?
Well, we take cases on a contingency fee. And what that means for you is that if you're hurt in an accident, we only get paid if you make a recovery. You'll never owe us anything out of pocket.
What about the call for a consultation?
That's not a problem. We don't charge anything for an initial consultation, so you have absolutely nothing to risk by calling us.
If you're injured in a car accident, call the Advocates, 640-4444, or online at montanaadvocates.com.
Some so-called sports bars, you spend so much time fighting to see the TV, you're better off just staying home. Others show the game, but a basket of stale rye chips is not exactly your idea of a good game grub. At the Desperado, you get front row seats to every single spring baseball and NASCAR event, plus all the spring NBA and NHL postseason action. And with juicy burgers, ice-cold brews, and the best wings in town, you'll leave the Desperado satisfied whether your team won or lost. The Desperado Sports Tavern, where the emphasis is sports, food, and good times. On South Russell, across from the Y.
Tootell and Nuanez on 102.9 ESPN Radio for Missoula.
Gosh, this is such a good job. Tootell Nuanez, 129 ESPN Missoula, broadcasting to you live from the Kurtz Polaris Studios, 2904 West Broadway in Missoula, Highway 83 in Sealy, online at kurtzpolaris.com. If you want to check us out online, you can go to 1029ESPN.com. You can also go to Facebook /ESPN Missoula. You also check out SkylineSportsMT.com. Thanks again to Quinn Peacock for joining us on the last segment. She's a Missoula Sentinel senior and a future University of Montana Lady Grizz soccer player. And I was playing with this scarf that they gave me while I was talking, but I didn't actually get a chance to acknowledge it. But this is very cool. They gave me a Missoula Strikers FC, or a Missoula Strikers Montana USA scarf, which is super cool. Anybody that follows soccer, they know that the scarves are a big thing. It's kind of like baseball hats or basketball jerseys. But cool Missoula Strikers scarf. So thanks so much for the Strikers for coming in. And stay tuned. We'll have Striker-themed interviews over the next month and a half or so. Remember that Intermountain Championship down at Fort Missoula, June 21st through the 23rd. So expecting to have at least 3 more featured interviews leading up to that tournament. So that'll be really, really fun.
Have you ever worked at a fast food place?
I've never worked at a fast food place. I have worked in restaurants and things like that, but never fast food. Have you?
Yeah, a lot of them. A lot of time frying chicken, making up Philly cheesesteaks, the overnight cleaning crews at certain places, cleaning grease traps. Oh, yeah.
What brought that up, Tommy?
You had mentioned that you love this job, so I was wondering, right. Is he comparing this to cleaning grease traps? Because that sucks.
Yeah, no, I've had some really bad jobs in my life. I can't really say was specifically on public radio outlets, but definitely had some bad jobs. Washing dishes at really busy restaurants is it's such a grind.
I love that kind of stuff.
Really?
If I ever leave you high and dry, you'll find me in a kitchen scrubbing plates. No joke. No pressure, no questions to answer, no one to answer to, my own world, some headphones, some dish soap, and a commercial dishwasher. I'm happy.
Man, you are a trooper, Tommy Evans. The reason I said I loved this job so much is that I'm just so impressed with the kids around Missoula and around the state of Montana. These kids are so mature and they got their stuff together and they all are goal-driven, and I find it inspiring. I think it's so neat.
How does it make you reflect on your own self at that age?
I always think about that because I always think, right, I obviously have a good ability to talk now as an adult.
Yes.
I talk a lot. Nonstop. I never stop talking. Whether it's the sales element of my job or the interviews element of my job or talking on this radio show. But if I was 17 years old, I don't know if I could go do a 15-minute radio segment with some stranger like Quinn Peacock just did. I was just so impressed. She was so good. That was a great interview.
There's a lot of cool elements to high school these days, particularly in the sports world and coaching. That idea in high school, I can attest to this, where I work, where I teach part-time, the notion of treating high schoolers as kids and saying, oh, you're still just kids is out. Our coaches and our teachers and our counselors say, you're an adult now. You'll be treated as one. I'll talk to you, not down to you. And I think that some of that side of this is playing a big part of what we're seeing in this change.
It's definitely one of the great parts of just the circle of life is growing a little bit older and then getting to work with the youth. I know you do a ton of work down at Big Sky, and I know you find it incredibly rewarding too, just being with the kids. Kids have such a great spirit, and it's always fun to be around them.
No doubt, man. No, very true.
Yesterday, Tucker Sargent was in studio, and we were just rambling on about the New England Patriots, as we tend to do when he's around. And so we didn't get into too much detail about these Montana State basketball coaching moves, but not coaching, roster moves. But the Montana State Bobcats has been probably the number one news story of the sports world this spring. Brian Fish went through an incredibly tumultuous spring as Montana State's head coach. He lost his daughter with about 6 weeks left in the season, and he coached valiantly. His team played valiantly, and then a hard-fought but ultimately season-ending loss to Eastern Washington in the quarterfinals of the Big Sky Tournament resulted in Brian Fish not having his contract renewed. The return of Danny Sprinkle comes for that. Danny Sprinkle, an all-time great Bobcat, a Bobcat Hall of Famer, and a guy who was the Big Sky Conference Tournament MVP the last time the Big Sky or the Bobcats won the Big Sky Tournament back in 1996. A Helena High product, a Helena native, and he's back at his alma mater. Well, since then, a whole bunch of newsworthy things worth mentioning. He retained Chris Haslam as one of his assistant coaches. He brought back Sean Durden. Sean Durden was an assistant coach under Brad Hughes at Montana State, as well as then was an assistant coach at North Dakota for a couple years, and has most recently been the head coach at a Division II school in Oklahoma. And the third addition to the Bobcat coaching staff is Dan Russell, who's the head coach at Casper College. There's a lot of speculation that Dan Russell was going to bring back Isaac Bonton. Isaac Bonton was the Oregon 5A Player of the Year out of Portland. He came to Montana State, played half of a season before abruptly transferring. He went to Casper College. He was a junior college standout, an all-region player. A lot of people thought Dan Russell would bring him back. And instead, Isaac Bonton does not come back to Montana State. He goes to Washington State. So he's in the Pac-12. But Dan Russell did help the Bobcats land another Casper College standout, 6'4" wing Amin Adamu. He is originally from London. So there's a natural connection there, not only with Dan Russell, but also with Chris Haslam. Chris Haslam was the head coach of the UK national team for quite a long time. So he's a guy that is from the UK himself. He's from London himself, so natural connection there. But Adamu's a 6'4" slasher. He averaged 15 points per game as a sophomore, and he gives a good element of athleticism to the Montana State roster. The other addition is Zach Hobbs, a 6'5" swingman from Mesa, Arizona. He last year at Mesa was an Interscholastic Association first-team all-conference in the state's largest classification, which is 6A. He's a 2-year captain. He averaged 17.3 points, 6.3 rebounds, 2.6 assists, and 1.6 steals per game last year. He was selected as the 6A East Valley Region Player of the Year and the Offensive Player of the Year. He was also an honorable mention by the Arizona Republic for the Boys Basketball Player of the Year in the state. And so he gives them an element of shooting, an element of slashing. But more than anything, I just think it's going to be so fascinating to watch the absolutely new look Montana State Bobcats. You won't have Brian Fish on the sidelines. The only real contributing players are All Big Sky point guard Harold Frey, junior big man Devin Kirby, and senior shooter Layden Ricketts. Those are the three main contributors that are coming back. Zeke Quinlan got some time as a freshman last year, and he's still on the roster. Quentin Guilford played sparingly as a true freshman last year, but he's still on the roster. But the rest of the roster is going to be brand new. They already signed a couple junior college kids when Brian Fish was still at the helm, and they graduate Keldron Blevins, Tyler Hall, Sam Newman, and Usman Haruna, who was a grad transfer from East Carolina who got hurt early and didn't really play much last year. But also, in the last week or so, Max Schuker, who's from Austria, he was a freshman a year ago, played pretty sparingly. He's out. He's into the community. He's into the transfer portal. Lassi Nikarinen, who actually started a handful of games a year ago as a sophomore. He's from Helsinki, Finland. He's into the transfer portal as well. So three total guys. And Russ Daniels, who was expected to be is going to be a senior. He's a former junior college transfer. He's in the transfer portal as well. So with all those seniors combined with guys leaving the program, Montana State's going to be a completely new look this upcoming year. And it's going to be fascinating to watch. They still have another scholarship left open, by my count at least. So it'll be interesting to see what they do to use that. They already added Xavier Bishop, who's a transfer who's going to have to sit out next year. So he's a guy that's going to take up a scholarship, but he's not going to be a part of the mix next year. But this Bobcat roster is going to be filled with intrigue. You know, the Grizz, they lose a substantial number of players as well. When you talk about Jamar Ako, Ahmad Rory, Michael Ogine, and Bobby Moorhead, all five seniors. Also, Kelby Kramer and Ben Carter into the transfer portal as well. So some lack of depth there, but they do have some young guys who sat out last year. Tony Miller is a transfer from Seattle Pacific, who was the Great Northwest Athletic Conference Freshman of the Year 2 years ago before sitting out at Montana last year. He should contribute. Yagi Selchuk is a guy that will be eligible at semester, and he should contribute too. He's a stretch 4, a 6'8" guy who can run a lot of pick and pop stuff. And Mac Anderson, his continued development will be huge. And then you put those guys all alongside Kendall Manuel and potentially Donovan Dorsey if he takes his 6th year, and Timmy Falls and Saeed Pridgett, who should be one of the front runners for preseason Big Sky MVP. And the Grizz, even though they do have a lot of key players leaving, they have a lot more familiarity. Whereas this Montana State team, it's Harold Frey, it's Devin Kirby, it's Layden Ricketts, and that's it. And they also have a brand new head coach as well. So watching that whole evolution is going to be really interesting. Tease for next week, Danny Sprinkle will be our guest on the ESPN Roundtable. He's a guy that I have only gotten to know a little bit. I've only interviewed him in person twice here. I was too young to have my career cross paths with him when he was a player at Montana State, and then when he was an assistant, I was still in high school during his time as an assistant there at MSU into then my early college years. And then he's been in California for basically the last decade plus. He was at Cal State Northridge. He was at Cal State Fullerton. And so I don't know Coach Sprinkle very well, but everybody that I do know that does know him, great returns. So it'll be fun having him on the ESPN Roundtable next week. If you haven't been listening to these ESPN Roundtables, it's one of my most favorite things that we do, long-form interviews that last 25, 30 minutes with pivotal and prestigious and prominent sports figures from around the state of Montana. And so we'll look forward to having Coach Sprinkle on the show next week. Speaking of the ESPN Roundtable, coming up next, Jim McElwain, our guest on the ESPN Roundtable this week. This was fun. Jim McElwain was in town for the KPAX/MontanaSports.com awards banquet, giving some awards to athletes from around the city and around the state. Also, Ray Racine Award goes to Jim O'Day. Jim O'Day, former Montana Athletic Director. Congratulations to Jim. He's been a guy that's been great to me during my life, mentored me a ton. And he helped me get into journalism school. He helped me stick with journalism. And a guy that I absolutely love every time I get a chance to catch up with him. Just a great dude. And we're efforting him, too. He's going to come in and do the show with us here probably early on next week when Ryan Tootell is back in the fold as well. But he won the Ray Racine Award, which is one of the most prestigious awards given in the sports scene in Missoula and in the state of Montana, just for his efforts giving back to the community. So really cool. Congratulations to Jim O'Day. But Jim McElwain, one of the favorite sons of Montana. He's a Missoula native, went to Missoula Sentinel, played quarterback at Eastern Washington, started his coaching career at Eastern Washington, was there for about a decade as a coach. Then he joined Cliff Heisel's staff at Montana State, was there for 4 years as the offensive coordinator, and then he jumped to Louisville where he coached under Bobby Petrino, and that sort of accelerated his arc. Then he was at Michigan State where he first crossed paths with Nick Saban. He was with John L. Smith there at Louisville and at Michigan State, and then he gets the offensive coordinator job at Alabama. He gets a chance to coach Heisman Trophy winners like Mark Ingram and first-round draft picks like Julio Jones. And then he goes and takes his first head coaching job at Colorado State, and Colorado State was a proud program under Sonny Lubick, and they were not so proud after Sonny Lubick retired. And Jim McElwain got him back on track, got him to a bowl game, and then he parlayed that success into becoming the head coach at the University of Florida. I can't imagine what it's like, a guy from Missoula, Montana, head coach at the Swamp. Incredible. And it didn't go his way down there in Florida. Had a couple tough years, as is bound to happen in the SEC. But now he's back on his feet, coaching at Central Michigan, head coach at Central Michigan now. So it was really fun catching up with him about his career. So stay tuned there. Before we get out, I got to give you the word of the day. It's a text-to-win contest. What we're giving you is 2 seats on a whitewater rafting trip anytime during June, July, or August, courtesy of Adventure Missoula. And all you have to do is text the word of the day, which today is raft. Text it to 200-8184. That's 200-8184. Your word of the day is raft. Get yourself entered to win an awesome whitewater rafting trip from Adventure Missoula. The ESPN Roundtable featuring Jim McElwain next.
Canyon River Golf Club is a must for any golfer in western Montana. Tucked away in a spectacular setting along the Clark Fork River in East Missoula, Canyon River offers one of Montana's best championship golf experiences. And Canyon River is happy to announce their new fleet of golf carts, which include the Shark Experience, an interactive GPS giving dynamic distances and touchscreen interaction to help you play your best. Plus, with Bluetooth, radio, and surround sound, you can enjoy yourself between holes, too. Book online at CanyonRiverGolfClub.com. Missoula's best golf, Canyon River.
Montana Club invites you to stop in for Club Cocktail Hour. Every day from 3 to 6, sip on $5 martinis. Get $1 off all wine and beer, including cool Montana micros. Enjoy $3 off all mouth-watering appetizers, or swing by Friday for Montini Night and perfectly mixed $5 top shelf martinis from 3 to close. It's time to relax at the Montana Club. Real Montana, real food on Brooks and North Reserve, Missoula.
Les Schwab is proud to introduce 2 of our best tires ever, just in time for summer. There's our exclusive Reputation, a high-mileage premium passenger tire we believe has the quietest, most comfortable ride ever. Or our exceptionally quiet and smooth all-season traction tire, the Open Range AT. Get $50 off alignment when you purchase a set of 4 Open Range AT or Reputation tires. Book an appointment today at leschwab.com. Les Schwab Tires. Doing the right thing matters. Cannot be combined with other offers. Limited time only. See details at leschwab.com.
On Russell, across from the fairgrounds.
No matter how far you may go, there's always one just down the road. Town Pump, ooh, pump it up, pump it up.
You know you need a pick-me-up, and Town Pump has just the thing. Make a quick stop at Town Pump today and grab 3 12-ounce Red Bulls for only $7. Or get any size fountain drink for only $1. Town Pump Food Stores, proud to be part of our community.
Town Pump, right down the road.
Springtime is the time to buy a new Polaris off-road vehicle. During the spring sales event, rebates go as high as $1,500 and financing is as low as 3.99%. Live your life wide open in a high-performance RZR. Tackle anything from mountains to mud holes on a legendary Sportsman ATV. Get more done with a hard-working Ranger, or take on any task or trail in a versatile Polaris General. Whatever you're looking for, now is the time to take your pick from the off-road's best-selling lineup. See Polaris.com or your Polaris dealer for rebates up to $1,500 and financing as low as 3.99% APR for 36 months during the Polaris Spring Sales event at Kurtz Polaris. Kurtz Polaris at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula and Highway 83 in Sealy. Recreate the right way with Kurtz Polaris, online at kurtzpolaris.com. Offer valid in U.S. through 5/31/19 on new 2015 through 2019 vehicles. Subject to credit approval. Offers vary by model. See dealer for details. Always wear a helmet. Never drink and ride.
ESPN Radio for Western Montana, KKVU HD3 Stevensville, and 102.9 FM on K275BS Missoula. ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
Good afternoon, Colter Nuanez, broadcasting into my fancy new Missoula Strikers scarf. Thanks to Quinn Peacock for giving that to me earlier on in the show. Clean sweeps are complete in the Montana State golf tournaments in the fall. Bozeman High and Laurel High swept the Class AA and Class A State boys and girls golf tournaments. This week in Western Montana, the Missoula Loyola boys and girls swept the first ever Class B tournaments held here in the Garden City, and Manhattan Christian won the Class C boys and girls state tournaments in Seeley Lake. Loyola senior Bucky Crippen fired an opening round 65, the third lowest round in the history of the Class B state tournament, then followed up with the 75 yesterday, both those rounds at the Ranch Club here in Missoula, to claim his second straight state crown. The two-day display helped the Rams to a nearly 50-stroke victory over Conrad for their second straight team title. And on the girls' side, Loyola senior Katie Fagg shot a 74, the best round of her high school career, in the opening round of the tournament at the Canyon River Golf Course on Tuesday, then followed up with an 82 in the low round Wednesday to win the state title and help the Breakers repeat as state champions as well. Landry Paladitchuk, a senior from Ennis, outlasted defending girls state C champion Jillian Fry of Manhattan Christian for the small school state title at the Double Arrow Golf Course in Seeley. And Caden Hill, he's back-to-back Class C state champion after shooting a second round 81 to earn a 12-stroke victory. 3 straight for the Manhattan Christian girls and 2 straight for the Manhattan Christian boys in the team title. Tootell Nuanez, 129 ESPN Missoula, statewide on SWX Montana Television, and worldwide on our new fancy YouTube channel. If you're wondering why I'm wearing a scarf even though it's getting close to summer, it's because I think this thing is sweet. I appreciate the Missoula Strikers bringing it in. Very nice of them to bring gifts. If we invite you in on the show, you're not obligated to bring gifts, but if you do, we're going to talk about them. We're going to wear them. We're going to pump them up. We love this kind of stuff. And great interview with Quinn Peacock. Missoula Strikers and Missoula Sentinel stand out on the soccer pitch, and a future Montana Lady Grizz. It'll be fun to watch her career, no doubt, as it continues to progress. Broadcasting to you live from the Kurtz Polaris Studios. Kurtz Polaris, 2904 West Broadway, as well as Highway 83 in Seeley. You can also find them online at kurtzpolaris.com. If you missed that Quinn Peacock interview or you missed anything else in the first hour of the show, Brooks Nuanez, SkylineSportsMT.com, hopped on to not talk about the Big Sky Conference, but instead to talk about the NBA playoffs. So good perspective there about Giannis Antetokounmpo, Damian Lillard, Steph Curry, the Warriors, the Bucks, the Raptors, and the Blazers. And had a little breakdown of the Montana State basketball roster as well. Danny Sprinkle continues to evolve with him at the helm. Without further ado, now it is time for our ESPN Roundtable. ESPN Roundtable is presented to us by Paradise Falls. Paradise Falls, 3621 Brook Street in Missoula. They have 18 tap beers. They got 30 big screen TVs with ESPN3 capabilities. They got one of the best late happy hours in town, Monday through Thursday. $3 beers, half-price apps, half-price cocktails. So go check them out. Paradise Falls, Missoula's coolest hotspot. ESPN Roundtable this week features Jim McElwain, a Missoula native who has risen through the coaching ranks to a higher level than maybe anybody that has come out of Missoula since probably Pokey Allen, and one of the great guys that have come out of the city of Missoula and the state of Montana. Started his coaching career at his alma mater, Eastern Washington, and then he coached at Montana State in the 90s, been in the FBS ever since. Louisville, Michigan State, Alabama as an offensive coordinator, then the head coach, Colorado State, and the head coach at Florida. And now he's the head coach of Central Michigan. The ESPN Roundtable presented by Paradise Falls featuring Jim McElwain. Welcome in to the ESPN Roundtable presented by Paradise Falls. Colter Nuanez is doing the second straight ESPN Roundtable without Ryan Tootell. He's still on the other side of the globe in the Philippines, but we keep marching on here at ESPN Missoula and SWX Montana. Today, ESPN Roundtable joined by a special guest, Missoula native and one of the most successful coaches to ever come out of the Garden City, Jim McElwain. Coach McElwain, thanks so much for being with us. Coach McElwain grew up in Missoula, born in Missoula, and went to Sentinel High School, and then left to go play quarterback at Eastern Washington. So, Coach, when you graduate from Missoula, you make the decision to go to Eastern Washington University, and Eastern, back then, not yet a Big Sky Conference school, but has then now evolved into one of the best schools in the Big Sky Conference. What led you to the decision to go play in Cheney? What sort of influence did Dick Zorns have on your later on coaching career, and what was that experience like playing for the Eagles?
Well, obviously growing up in Missoula, really knew nothing but the Grizzlies. And,
right.
And, it's a place that, obviously all my family all graduated from the University of Montana. I thought that was going to be the path. And I was part of, the other 2,000 people that used to go to Dornblazer and watch the games. And, they had a coaching changeover, and as it turned out, it probably had more to do, with my life than any other thing. I was really fortunate. Former Missoula guy by the name of Pokey Allen, who at the time was a D coordinator at the University of Montana for Gene Carlson. When they got let go, he ended up going over to Eastern Washington and working for Coach Zorns. And they needed a extra arm as a quarterback, and Pokey called, and we went over, and I tell you, I spent 15 years of my life in Cheney after we left Missoula, and it was great being part of something that you could see grow. And Coach Zorns, who even to this day, when I talk to him, think about him, you think about the lessons that he taught, and I was just really fortunate. We had an unbelievable time in Cheney. It's a great place. I'm really excited to see the growth. I know we were in kind of on the ground floor and working up and trying to make it into something, and to see what they have done and the great coaches that are in there and the players. It's something that's obviously my wife and I. She's a graduate of Eastern Washington. And it's a place that we carried a whole piece of Montana with us when we went. And, coming back here every year was something special.
The Montana State rivalry is fierce of a rivalry as you'll find in college football, but Eastern Washington, Montana over the last 15 years has become sort of the secondary rivalry in the Big Sky Conference and the primary rivalry for your alma mater. So as a Missoula guy who went to Eastern, how do you reconcile yourself when those two teams play?
Well, it's pretty interesting because, our love for Montana is something that runs really deep, and yet, Eastern Washington was a place that gave me an opportunity to grow, a place that gave me an opportunity to play and go into coaching. And, so it obviously, when we finish time, I hope to be able to come to Washington Grizzly Stadium there and watch the Eagles play because, we started a pretty good rivalry all the way back, into the mid to late 80s. And I know for Eastern it was something that we always strived, to be like the University of Montana. Let's call it the way it is. They've done an unbelievable job in Missoula, and we always looked at that as one of those programs that we tried to emulate. And I just, again, really fortunate. I can't tell you, those 15 years we spent in Cheney were special, and yet every year we made that drive back to Flathead Lake and spent time here and caught a lot of heck from a lot of people for being an Eagle.
No doubt about it. Well, last year Eastern Washington advanced all the way to the FCS National Championship, and Eastern's been sort of the perennial power in the Big Sky Conference this decade, overtaking even Montana and Montana State. What have you thought of just the rise of the Eagles? Huh? Right, it is crazy, right?
Crazy. I just remember being part of it there. We were actually denied admittance to the Big Sky Conference. I believe it was around 85 or 86.
Mm-hmm.
And there was talk about disbanding the program and dropping back down into Division II or NAIA, and it was really a rough time, and yet through great leadership, you mentioned Coach Zorns, our athletic director, Ron Raver at the time, we held strong, and the second time we put in a bid to try to be part of the conference, we were let in, and that really is what, moved us forward in that state. It's a great niche. You got the Cougars and you've got the Huskies, and then you've got Eastern Washington playing as a Division I member and being able to, have scholarships, at the time, any given year when we were there, 85 to 90% of our team was from the state of Washington. And we really felt that we found a niche, and it's been great. Over the years, we actually would sneak in and grab a couple Montana people, which, to me was great. And but I think it was a place that gave people a chance. A lot of us weren't recruited highly, and you end up developing, and it was an unbelievable place for us. And all three of my kids were born right there, and obviously where I met my wife. And it's a special, special place. And the rivalry that has become a little bit with the Grizzlies and the Eagles, I'm kind of proud of. I think it's healthy, and I think it's a wonderful thing for the people in the region.
Jim McElwain joining us for the ESPN Roundtable presented by Paradise Falls. Paradise Falls, 3621 West Brook Street, open 7 a.m. to midnight. 30 big screen TVs, ESPN 3 capabilities. Go check out any sports game you want to watch down at Paradise Falls. Coach, you have such deep Big Sky roots, and that extended then into coaching at Montana State. Cliff Heisel was a guy I got to know a little bit later in his life when I was at the Bozeman Chronicle and then running Skyline Sports in Bozeman, and just a true original, as tough as they come, and one of the funniest, honoriest guys you'll ever meet. What was it like working for Coach Heisel back in the mid-'90s at Montana State? What do you remember about his influence on your career?
Well, I loved that time. For me, it was a chance to come back to Montana, where, I always wanted to be. And Coach Heisel took a flyer on me coming out of Eastern, to be the offensive coordinator. And, one thing you learn in this profession, it's really good to have a defensive-minded head coach when you're an offensive guy. And that was the case at Eastern with Coach Zorns, and then obviously with Coach Heisel. And I was well aware of Cliff and his time at Fresno State with another former Montana guy, Jim Sweeney, who my dad coached with actually up at Flathead County High School. And a guy, again, that was really proud to be from Montana. We could never get it done in that rivalry with the Grizzlies, and one of the greatest games I've ever been a part of, when we took a 2-minute drive to take a lead. Grizzlies came back with about 40 seconds and kicked a 40-yarder to win it, and we thought we had snapped the streak. But it was something where you continue to learn, and Coach Heisel was really good in special teams as well, and it's kind of where I got my start, even kind of understanding the true importance of that part of it, as we went ahead. But great people in Bozeman. It was awful hard for our family to accept the fact that I was coaching at Montana State. I think I even had some buddies that struggled talking to me for a while, but it was fun, and you talk about that rivalry. I've been able to be part of some special rivalries. I think about the Iron Bowl, between Auburn and Alabama, and just how fierce that is. But, I don't know of all the places that there's a better rivalry than the Cats and the Grizz.
It is certainly one of the most intense. Coach McElwain, it's so interesting thinking about you coaching in the Big Sky and being so close to so many of the people that I've crossed paths with in my career, and so many guys that have had such influences on the Big Sky Conference. But then you take the leap and you go to Louisville with John L. Smith, and that leads you to Michigan State, and now stops at Alabama, and then most recently head coach at Colorado State, Florida, Michigan. So when you talk about coaching and having your roots in the Big Sky Conference, but then going to the absolute top level, what are some of the differences between the FBS and the FCS, and what are some of the just biggest challenges you faced throughout your career coaching at the highest level of football?
Sure. You mentioned John L. Smith, who actually has Big Sky roots as well, and coached at the University of Montana. And that's kind of, I met him at a Big Sky coaches golf tournament, believe it or not, and he's a guy who gave me that opportunity to be into Division I, and climbing forward as we went. And John L. had great influence on a lot of things that I do today, and it's one of those deals where after you get over the initial 104,000 people in the stands or whatever that piece is, it boils down to the things that you learned along the way. And you reflect back to, it doesn't matter whether you were playing, behind Sentinel High School in Little Grizzly football, or at the fairgrounds when you're at Missoula Sentinel. It comes down to people. And Karen and I, my wife, we've been so fortunate to meet unbelievable people along the way, and yet the one thing that you always reach back on are the people who influenced your coaching careers. And you mentioned, and Coach Zorns, Coach Heisel, Coach John L. Smith, all with Big Sky roots. Mm-hmm. And that makes it awful special.
Is there anything you can point to that during that time? I mean, I know John L. Smith and Dennis Erickson, both very, very innovative offensively back in the 80s at the University of Idaho, and Pokey Allen, another guy that was very innovative on offense as well. So, can you point to anything that can link the Big Sky to so many of you guys rising through the ranks and the way that you guys have all been able to cultivate so much success?
Well, I think when you look back, and Dennis Erickson kind of started it where he broke from a traditional two-back set into a one-back offense, which is back in Idaho in the 80, 81, 82, and something like that when he was there. And, also, let's take a look at what Don Reed and Tommy Lee did when they came in, following Larry Donovan, at the University of Montana. It was a league that was very progressive, and the amount of offensive guys who have come out of the Big Sky Conference that have gone on, to coach at all levels, and including there's a large number in the National Football League, which, I crossed paths with actually when I was at the Oakland Raiders. And all of us look back on the times we had in the Big Sky Conference, and really what a conference it was. I know Idaho came back, and they should be back, but you had Reno, you had Boise, then Eastern snuck into that league, and I think back then those natural rivalries, the coaches were amazing coaches, and the part is when you look at the roots, they all come back somehow to the Big Sky Conference and really to Montana. And that's been fun to see. We've been fortunate. Again, I can only say how fortunate we have been to be involved with such great people. And, them giving a kid out of Missoula a chance to live his dreams. And it all points right back here to the great state of Montana.
You are listening to the ESPN Roundtable presented by Paradise Falls. Paradise Falls, 3621 Brook Street in Missoula. They have 18 draft beers, more than 30 big screen TVs with ESPN 3 capabilities. You can find any game you want to watch. down at Paradise Falls. You got a new menu that opens 7 a.m. to midnight, one of the best late happy hours in town, Monday through Thursday, 9 to 11, $3 microbrews. And if that's not good enough, half-price cocktails, half-price appetizers. So go check them out. Paradise Falls, Missoula's coolest hotspot. Without further ado, more from the ESPN Roundtable with Jim McElwain, Missoula native, former Alabama offensive coordinator, Florida, Colorado State head coach, and now the head coach at Central Michigan University.
Well, and then that small-town kid gets a chance to be on the biggest stage. I got to ask you about your time at Alabama. Alabama is so fascinating to me. We talk about Alabama football on our show quite often, and I just feel like Coach Saban has established this expectation of excellence. It seems like he recruits in a different fashion than most every other Power 5 high-level program, and it seems like he challenges every single player in his program to be the best version of themselves. And I think that's so interesting to watch just how unwavering they've been. No complacency ever creeps into that program. What was it like working for Nick Saban for 4 years?
Well, I think when you look at that piece, remember I was at Fresno with Pat Hill, who actually was a assistant for Jim Sweeney. There's another link right back to the great state of Montana. And when we got a call from Coach Saban, I actually hung up the first time. I thought it was one of my buddies messing with me. Thank God he called back, and I had the opportunity to be part of one of the greatest traditions in college football, and that's the University of Alabama. You mentioned about his players, but I think more than anything, the total organization, from the administration through the equipment room to the trainers to your fundraisers to whoever, everybody's on the same page. And what you learn from Coach Saban is the understanding that there's one message, and that message is all driven to help the kids and the players be successful. You check your ego at the door, which is pretty easy, being where I came from. And, when we sat down, he really only asks two things of his coaches. And, he wants you to work hard and be complete in what you do. And when you look back at it, if you just follow those two things in anything that you do in life, you got a pretty good chance of being successful. We went in and, my first year there was coming off his first year, so it was his second at Alabama. Shoot, they'd lost to Louisiana Monroe, and I think played Colorado in the Independence Bowl the year before I got there. And we started to get some really good players, and had a chance to have a freshman class with Mark Ingram, a Heisman Trophy winner, and Julio Jones, arguably the best receiver in the National Football League. And that first year we went on a run and went 12-0 up to the SEC championship, and kind of got a taste of it before we were able to go undefeated the next year and win a national championship in a place that I dreamed of being, and that was we played Texas in the Rose Bowl for that national title, and that was something special. My mom was able to come to that game, and she knew my dreams were to always do something in that Rose Bowl, and that was special. And as we moved forward, his coaching style was something that was really easy for me because, my background was obviously with Coach Zorns, Coach Heisel, who were, really detail-oriented in everything. And so it was an easy transition. And obviously having good players helps as you win a couple national titles when we're at Alabama.
For so long in sports, there was so many guys that achieved almost mythical status, Paul Bunyan-like status, but that's been sort of diluted with the social media and everybody having a camera in their pocket and all this stuff. But Julio Jones is such an interesting character because he almost still has that Paul Bunyan-like feel. You listen to stories of Julio Jones in high school that people will tell, and he's unquestionably one of the great pure athletes that we have ever seen play football. I remember hearing a story He finished third in the student body election in Alabama before he even was a student there. He was so popular. And there's the story of him not having shoes at the combine that fit him, and he still runs a 4.3 flat. And the guy's he's played through injuries and he's been so prolific. But to be up close and personal with the guy that has the natural gifts that he has as well as the drive, that had to be just fascinating.
Yeah, it was. And there's certain guys as you go through in coaching and the great ones. I even think back to a Super Bowl MVP I coached by the name of Deion Branch when I was at the University of Louisville. And guy, I think he still holds a record for most catches at a Super Bowl. But, here's what sets those people apart is their practice habits are as good as game habits. When they came to work, it was about trying to be not just good, but be elite. And they pushed themselves and competed in everything they did. I mean, Julio's one of those guys that it didn't matter what you were doing, he wanted to win. And I remember going and watching him play high school basketball when we were recruiting him. They ran this. I couldn't figure out what it was. We were down at Foley, and they ran basically a zone where he just sat in the middle of the key as really the center. Now, he's about 6'3", but they funneled everything to him. And within the first quarter, there were 7 blocked shots. They just pushed everybody to Julio, and he swatted it. And he just loved to compete. And, it's great to see him. It's great to even, talk to him to this day. And we've been at some events together, and to see that smile and really a humble guy is something that's real special.
Jim McElwain joining us on the ESPN Roundtable. He's the head coach at Central Michigan. We're talking Big Sky roots, SEC dreams achieved. And we got to ask you about your time at Florida, Coach. When you're coaching the Florida Gators, one of the most prestigious jobs in all of college football, you're coaching at the Swamp. You're going to battle every single week in the SEC, which is unquestionably the premier conference in the country. First of all, how trying is that to try to get prepared? Because you might play a top 25 team every week in a row for an entire month and a half.
You actually do. But it's a blast. I'm telling you, you pinch yourself because, there's not a lot of people that get an opportunity like that. And we went from Colorado State to there. And when you think about that experience at Colorado State, we took over a program that was, I think, 3-9 for the previous 4 seasons. And wanted to try to get it back up to a place that another former Montana guy, Sonny Lubick, who was coaching at Montana State actually, and a Butte High school coach, and to be able to go there and make that rise was amazing. And then to get a call from a place like Florida, the Swamp is as you said. Something unbelievable on a Saturday, and we had a great opportunity. We went in there; they were a little down, and our staff, we were the first and only staff in the history of the SEC to go to the SEC championship in our first 2 years, and it's something that will always hold special to me. I love the players. The players, they competed. They majority of them didn't come from a lot. And so they weren't spoiled. And to see how hard they would practice and to see how hard they would play, and you hit it week in and week out. There were no breathers. And yet, when you're in coaching, when you're in athletics, you want to go challenge yourself at the highest level you can, no matter what it is. And you'll never forget that opportunity. It was amazing.
A lot of retrospective in this interview, but now we got to talk about the right here and now. Hired as the head coach at Central Michigan in December of last year, and now coming into this year, I'm sure there's a ton of optimism there. But what did you like about becoming the head coach there at Central Michigan for the Chippewas, and what is your vision for building CMU back up?
Well, I think
First and foremost, I think it kind of like, I get quite a bit is, why the heck would you do it? And they were a 1-11 team a year ago, and it goes back to the people and the people you're working with. The athletic director at Central Michigan is a guy I worked with when I was at the University of Alabama. He and his wife are wonderful people, and he's a new athletic director there, and has a vision, and being in sync when you're at the collegiate level, being in sync with the vision of the president, the board, obviously the athletic director. Those are the things that you really look for, and that's kind of one of the things you learn along the way is everybody better be on the same page, and this is that opportunity. We have a new president that, when you talk about Big Sky ties, was actually at Boise State and at Reno at one time, and of course Michael Alford, our athletic director, being able to work hand in hand with him at Alabama. The footprint is there and the direction is there, and it's a lot of fun. I was able to get some of the old band back together, and we're coaching ball and having a blast, and it's amazing when you get into a place like that has really great history. They were a 1AA power back with Herb Duramity and Roy Kramer. They know how to win, and they know what it is, and now being able to come in there and really the kids having a chance to affect them in a positive way, it's amazing. The little things you do for them, how appreciative they are, and it's a lot of fun. Mount Pleasant's a great place to live, and yet we keep trying to inch back closer to Montana. And in a couple of years, we look forward to being up here at Flathead and really taking a chance with my wife and I, kind of looking back on our journey, which has been, you brought up some things I haven't even thought about, and yet sometimes it's good to kind of reflect.
No doubt. Jim McElwain joined us on the ESPN Roundtable, and Coach, we'll get you out of here on this. Back in Montana, enjoying Polson and Flathead Lake right now. You'll be in Missoula this evening for the Sports Awards Banquet presented by KPAX and MontanaSports.com. And there's a ton of tremendous athletes that will be recognized tonight from both Missoula and around the state of Montana. What sort of message do you hope to convey to them, and how do you hope to inspire them as a guy that did grow up in Missoula and has risen to such high heights in the world of athletics?
Well, I think the drive on 93 down to Missoula, I better come up with something. But really, when you look at it, it's really about choices, and really, how you choose to be. There's, you can choose to be bad, you can choose to be average, you can choose to be good. It's a personal choice, and yet how hard it is when you choose to be, elite and excellent in everything that you do, and that push moving forward is something that's, really has more to do with, your upbringing. And, my dad, my mom, my family, and obviously the great people in Missoula that were a part of our lives, that constantly pushed us to not just be okay, not just be good. And, I don't think I'd have been able to do any of this without being from Missoula and growing up there. It's means so much. And I've been in a lot of banquets in my life. I promised my buddies that are showing up that I'd make it short. So, but to have those people honored and those kids honored means so much. And yet, Big Sky wasn't around when I was there. And one thing I will remember, there's the Sentinel and Hellgate rivalry, and I always remembered one of my coaches telling me that once a Spartan, always a Spartan. Once a night's enough. That's what I do remember from that rivalry, and I'm excited to see some of the people that'll hopefully come out, and I look forward to catching up.
Jim McElwain, join us on the ESPN Roundtable. Coach, this was great. Thanks so much for being with us.
No, I appreciate it, man. Thanks.
Not every day you get to interview a guy who's worked for Nick Saban and coached against all the great coaches in the SEC. Missoula, Montana should be very proud of Jim McElwain. He's a great representative of the state of Montana and an all-around great guy. Tootell Nuanez 129 ESPN Missoula, statewide SWX Montana, and worldwide on YouTube TV. We're up against it. We're late. We're always late. But up next, I got track and field qualifiers for the NCAA regional meet. Got an update on the state golf tournaments and your text to win word of the day. Tootell Nuanez.
Canyon River Golf Club is a must for any golfer in western Montana. Tucked away in a spectacular setting along the Clark Fork River in East Missoula, Canyon River offers one of Montana's best championship golf experiences. And Canyon River is happy to announce their new fleet of golf carts, which include the Shark Experience, an interactive GPS giving dynamic distances and touchscreen interaction to help you play your best. Plus, with Bluetooth, radio, and surround sound,